All right. Can y'all see me this time? I tried before and talked for 20 minutes, and I don't think it worked. Now, I'm seeing people pop up, so I hope y'all are seeing this because I don't think it recorded last time. Is there any, if there's anybody there, can you say something in the chat? Or if you're seeing this, if you're actually getting my broadcast on the Kickstarter page, I'm going to pull the page up in a different browser. If you can see me, let me know in the chat here or post it in the comments. All right. So it's, I see you, Raymond. Good deal. So this is showing up on the page. Fantastic. All right. Well, my name is Van Overbay, and I'm the designer of SeaRovers. And I saw a question there. I'm going to pull it back up here. I'm not used to using a webcam, so pardon me, and I do apologize for the problems I was having earlier with it. And as I said, I did about a 20-minute spiel and thought I was recording, and I don't think it did. So let me pull up a question here I had. And if you have any more questions, go ahead and submit them over there. Well, it's not giving it to me now because that live feed is gone away. Well, hopefully some other people will pop up here, and but I'm here to tell you about SeaRovers and explain it to you some, tell you about the gameplay. A lot of people are wondering about it. We do have videos coming. You can see one of the prototypes behind me there with a bunch of the components, the game board. It's a very large game board. It's a 22-inch by 33 6-panel game board, and you know, there somebody mentioned in the comments there is some space off to the side areas, but that actually will have cards on it during the game. You have a community attack row of 4 cards that go on the left side of the board, and during the game each player has their own attack row of 6 cards. So you'll have 3 Buccaneer attacks and you'll have 3 pirate attacks, and then you'll have the community attack row that'll have 2 Buccaneer attacks and 2 pirate attacks. So you have a lot to choose from. But it's a big board, and there's a lot of planning involved, and your haven can play a big role in that because you can change your haven during the course of the game. And basically the way the game works is each player's dealt a hand of 8 cards, and as I said, you'll have your attack row with 6 attacks, and each player also gets a starting vessel, and a vessel is made up of a ship card, a captain, a crew, and cannons. So you can have up to all 4 of those cards to make up a vessel that can go to sea, or you can simply even just have a captain and a vessel card, because a vessel card has basically a basic crew on it. So a captain and a vessel card without the extra guns and crew can go to sea, but it's not very powerful. But there are situations where that may benefit you. So you start the game with a starting vessel, and you have a haven. You have your attack row, and then you have a hand of 8 cards. Now you can assemble and have assembled up to 3 vessels on the table at any time during the game, and those are represented by playing pieces on the game board. So what you're trying to do is, you know, choose your attacks, plot your course, and based on your vessel strength and what you may be able to complete, and then go after those attacks. And then as you complete them, you get the booty, the pieces of 8. And those go on board your ship, and you have to get those back to a haven to cash them in. But your supply of booty is what you spend each turn. That's how you build your vessels. That's how you play wild cards. You have to pay it to move. So as your booty supply increases, it's the more you can do. You start with 12. So each time you get a vessel back to a haven, you can increase that supply of booty. Now you also have gold doubloons. And all this is victory points because the game is based on 12 turns. And this is something that's different from previous games. We used to just play till a person reached a certain amount of silver. But a lot of times people tend to gang up on somebody that's in the lead when you're doing that. So what we did was we changed it to where it's now 12 turns. So you have Blackbeard's last fight track. And each turn, the markers moved on it. And then that really cuts down on at least ganging up on the leader. It also makes it a little more critical to analyze and go after attacks. I mean, you can attack other players, if the situation's right, but it's not a game just based on going out and and killing each other, but I like that you can do that. So with 12 turns, you do have to, pay attention to those victory points. It's going to be your pieces of 8, and it's going to be your gold doubloons. Now, each time you complete an attack, you're going to get 1 gold doubloon. And that's worth 2 victory points. Each piece of 8 is worth 1 victory point. Now, if you use a historical captain, and if you look at the captain cards, you'll see coordinates listed down the left side. And those are actual historical attacks that captain participated in. So if you use him on one of those attacks, when you complete that attack, you gain an extra gold doubloon. So that's 2 extra victory points. And those are immediately secured. I mean, those can't be taken away by another player or anything. So so that's a big part of the strategy is hooking up with those historical captains and using them on the historical attacks. There's different roads to victory. Combat's definitely involved, sometimes player by player. Also, hand management is vital in it. There's going to be cards you're going to want to hang on to, sometimes use later. Each time you use a captain, of course, you send them out to sea, and they can stay out to sea as long as they want to. Now, a vessel can only hold a certain number of pieces of 8. So once it's full, it can still stay out, and you could use it, to attack somebody or whatever, but that's all it can hold. And, of course, you do want to secure that because you can use that booty. But once you bring a captain back to port, that vessel goes away. All those cards, the captain, the vessel, everything go in the discard pile. So each captain basically only gets 1 shot out at sea. So you really have to make wise use of them. As I said, you do have 3, and it's really a thrill to get Blackbeard, lined up with Queen Anne's Revenge and 12 pounders and have a 9-dice vessel out there. It's kind of like having a royal flush in poker. It doesn't happen very often, but the game has a lot of replayability with elements like that, things you can set up. You've got Mary Read and Anne Bonny in the game. They're crew members. If you have them with Calico Jack, that's the only time you can have 2 crew on the same vessel, is if Anne Bonny and Mary Read are together with Calico Jack. So that's a cool setup. You've got Robert Searle and the Cagway, Michael Andresian and La Tigre. He's one of my favorite. He's the guy smoking the cigar. So which reminds me, I need to smoke my pipe. But if there's any questions, I'd love to see if the chat works here. I haven't seen anything pop up yet, but hopefully everybody's still getting this on the page. I really hate the first one went away. So like I said, I did talk for about 20 minutes, and I hope I answered some questions. Now, people were asking about the movement system and how that could work even in combat and stuff. And so basically, you have a basic move system that's based on the vessel, its base move, your captain's nautical skill, and then also the wind strength. Now, with the advanced system, you got the wind strength and direction, the vessel's move. You'll get the modifier, and you have the captain's nautical skill. One optional rule I did come up with was if you're using the advanced system, you can use the weather gauge. So if you approach a vessel with the wind at your back in a certain position, and I'll have this all charted out, you will gain an advantage in combat. So that's one of the things I have set up kind of as an advanced optional rule. There's a couple of little rules like that. I've also got one for captains, a dueling situation. That's pretty cool, outside of the normal one with the wild card, something like that. But it really gives you a nautical feel. I think a hex map was very important to capture that. Using the wind and weather is such an important part of any seaman's life, and especially the pirates. The more research I did, there was times where they would have comms and be stuck for weeks in the doldrums and couldn't get where they were going. I don't simulate it quite that drastically, but I do give you enough flavor to know when a hurricane's coming, and that's pretty cool in the game too, because that was something that several pirates dealt with. But most aspects that you would find throughout pirate history are represented in the game. Even ancillary things that connect to it, such as Alexander Selkirk, Robinson Crusoe, based on him. And he connects to William Dampier, who connects to Woodes Rogers. Woodes Rogers was a pirate hunter, also a pirate out of New Providence. So, there's a lot of rich history that I've put in the game. A lot of it is in the mechanics of it with the way the historical vessels. If you pair the captain up with his historical vessel, you get a move bonus, a plus one, so that's really cool. And then of course you've got the historical attack bonuses. Captains have basically, they've got their command strength. That's the number at the very top with the dice. That's how much he adds to an actual vessel's overall strength. You've got his nautical skill and the compass. At the very bottom, the skulls running across. That's what he rolls for a saving throw. That's how many dice. And then you've also got his historical attacks that'll be running the coordinates down the left side of the card. So they've got a few aspects to them that, to me, as I said, I've streamlined a lot of things, but tried to leave enough flavor in it and make a game that's playable, something that don't take 6 hours. This game runs, anywhere from 20, 30 minutes of play or something like that. With the advanced movements, it can carry out longer. I mean, you can really get into it, and with the wind and weather, and if you're using the weather gauge and stuff, it can be a really rich experience that takes an entire afternoon if you want it that way. But it's also a streamlined game that can be played in 2 hours or less. An hour and a half. Even with the basic move system. As any questions I can answer, I'm gonna bounce over and look at the comments. Because as I said, this is the first time I've really even messed with a webcam, period. I'm a graphics guy, art, pictures, worked for ad agencies for years. I'm kind of doing this campaign. I did a lot of research, and my videos are coming. I hate that I didn't have them to begin with, but I was hoping, as I said, I'm kind of a picture and graphics guy, but they are coming. I've got some great people involved in that. And let me check the comments here and see if anything's popped up. I don't think so, but I believe I'm still live on the page. I hope so, and people will be able to play this back. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can cover that you might have some questions about. One of the cool things, I do have a captain's logbook card that's going to come with the game, and this is like, let's see if I can get it in the camera here. All right. And as you can see, it's got spaces on it. So what you'll do is you can use a dry erase pen or a grease pencil, and it just gives you a quick way each turn to calculate those things that can add up to your movement, especially with the advanced movement. You got 5 or 6 things. I don't like people losing track of, oh, I forgot the +1 for the whatever. That makes it real simple, and you just wipe it off and use it each turn. And you do have to kind of keep up with your vessel's direction. So your playing piece on the board, will have a particular facing at the end of a turn, and then you'll pick up with the wind, and it's whatever its effect is the next turn around. And yes, I see the question about playthrough video. Absolutely, there are some playthrough videos coming. That's what Undead Viking's going to have a copy of the game, and I'm looking forward to him doing a playthrough. I've got other ones going out to Logan Chops, also Unfiltered Gamer, and the folks at Pirates Parlay. So there should be some very good gameplay in that, and and I'll make sure there's some on the page. So that's coming up, and very soon. I look real forward to that. And the hurricane's a great thing. I can't stress that enough. It really adds a lot of flavor to the. It's not overpowered though. That's one of the things I really tried to make this game. Something that's a strategic experience. I mean, I want a game that's rich as far as your tactics and your strategy. It isn't just the luck of the dice. It's really about planning. It's about card play. It's about hand management. It's about risk versus reward. But the whole thing provides a rich experience. All the pieces and parts. Really everything that through all the research I did, which was quite a bit. Everything that I could put into the game that made sense. And worked in a way to be balanced. That was what was important to me. So basically, that's what you have. You have 160 cards. So that's quite a bit. There's 24 captains, 36 attacks, and so it gives you, a very good ratio, and everything plays out very well. Plays great with 2 players all the way up to 4, and of course it has the solo game, which plays great too. And I really look forward to the Blackbeard's challenge on that. That's going to be fun. And I've got my dump stat tee on from the great folks at Victory Condition Gaming, and I've got my coasters they gave me. Got my caramel moonshine. So it's a good evening. I'm glad to have y'all here, and certainly glad to have your support on SeaRovers. So I'm gonna see if I can think of anything else to tell you about it. So people have been playing it for a long time. I think I started mailing out the first copies in 2005, and I took it to Dragon Con, and I was talking to a company there about licensing, and they were doing very well. They had they were moving and shaking at that time, and they had a license with the History Channel, and I had my other game too. And so at Dragon Con, they had a group of playtesters from Seattle that were Magic the Gathering playtesters, and so we all played SeaRovers in a hotel room. And basically their comment was it's best prototype they've ever played. That's what they told the guy. I'm not just spouting it, but I mean, that's what they said. That's what he said. We talked licensing, went down the road for a month or so and got into contracts, and couldn't quite come to an agreement. There was a couple of holes in it that I just, if they weren't buttoned up, I wasn't going to do it. Because SeaRovers is something that, I've licensed other games, and but this is something that I really, is really a passion project and something I've taken to heart. And I've never worked on anything that has been this time consuming. The research, the graphics, the writing alone, the gameplay design, every aspect of this game is pretty much original. I mean, it's not based on anything. I mean, it's sort of based on my other game, which is an original design, Moonshot, the way the card play works in it. But everything in this is original to fit the theme, the mechanics, the ships, the movement, the captains, the strength. Everything has a certain, the mathematics behind it is very strong. It's a solid game. I mean, a lot of people want to see some gameplay, and I certainly want to too. The only thing that holds things back sometimes, I'm a perfectionist, and so sometimes last minute things, getting them put together or something, if it's not right, then it does take me a little longer. So I do apologize for any hold up with that, but I'm glad I was able to get the campaign launched. I think it's going great. We're over 50% funded. It's looking really good. I've still got ad campaign running. As soon as we get the videos up, I think that's going to provide quite a bit of surge. So I think we're obviously on our way to being funded. It's just how far we get in the stretch goals. I'd like to see us get all of them. I think if everybody will spread the word. Not many people do. At least, I've been watching and following Kickstarter for years. It took me a long time to get to where I could actually launch mine. I had some health issues years ago that really slowed up SeaRovers and everything. That's kind of what put things behind, because I had licensed it in 2008, version 3.0, to a large toy company out of Australia, and it was headed by a former Hasbro CEO. And they were really, at the time, they were expanding, they were licensing a lot, they were buying up, they had licensed Hummer, the B-Movie, Golden Books, a bunch of stuff. So they had licensed my products. You can even dig on the internet and find it listed in their notes of that board meeting for that year. The new acquisitions, and SeaRovers was listed in it. But the financial crisis that happened at the end of 2008, 2009 took a toll on them. They had overextended, and they wound up reorganizing. And it just so happened that at the same time, at the end of 2008, my wife and I were diagnosed with cancer the same exact week. So that really just flipped everything upside down. I've been running my own business for since about 2000. I've been a partner in one of the biggest agencies in Chattanooga. I've worked at about a dozen ad agencies, done work for a lot of different people over the years, a lot of companies, a lot of Fortune 500 companies. I started my own company, was doing very good. We were just getting ready to get health insurance, and that happened. And that really flipped everything upside down. So it took me a while to get my license back. Of course, we had health issues and things like that to deal with for quite a while. I'm good now. We're cancer-free. That's been 10 years ago. I still fight kidney stones every once in a while. That's one of the things that stymied this project up over the last few months. Some of you know me better than others and have followed me in other places, but I've had some kidney stone issues over the last couple of months, and actually I've had 2 surgeries in the last 4 weeks. So that's slowed me down some, but I'm this is what I do, and this is what I love to do, and this is my passion, and bringing it to you is what it's all about. I mean, these games will be here long after I am, and this is what I'm putting myself into. So I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, I'm going to come back and do more of these. I'm going to make sure they're done right, or at least the best I can. I do almost everything by myself. I've got Cooper here somewhere. Hey, Cooper, come here. He's my right-hand man. Come here. Come here. Come on. Come here. He's lazy. Well, anyway, again, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I could tell you about the game. There's a lot of aspects to the gameplay, but really you've got the 3 vessels. You've got your hand of cards. You've got your attack row. You can change those attacks out. So if you don't have anything you like, during your draw phase, you can draw a new attack card. But you've also got that community attack row, and that was a big change between 3.0 and 4.0 is adding the community attack row, and I love it. I mean, over the years, if you go to Board Game Geek and you look at the feedback and you look at the comments and stuff, it's always gotten good feedback. But there's always a few little things that people, whether it was runaway leader, might be a little bit of an issue, sometimes getting stymied, having to wait on cards or certain things. And, all that's been resolved. I mean, that was resolved pretty much in 3.0. And from 3.0 to 4.0, the last few things, such as the way the victory points work now, the 12 turns, the community attack row, better basic movement system, the advanced move system, as I said, it's rich. I mean, it can slow the game down, but man, if you like that kind of stuff and like the wind and the weather, that's one of the great things about the game too. So, I didn't want a game that had all these different systems and looked like something that didn't play right. I mean, it's set up really well for the 2. It's got the basic system. The cards are exactly the same. The information on the ship cards works identical for each system. And as I said, you've got the charts right on the game board for the basic system. And then with the advanced system, you do have the cross-reference chart. But hopefully we'll have the ball veils. Those are very cool, the calculating wheels. So is there anything else I can... Anybody want to pop up in the chat or throw something in the comments for me to address or give you some info about? I'm going to go back over here to the campaign page and take a quick look. Don't see anything new on there. All right. But hey, we're still live. I'm just glad to be live and y'all seeing this. So I'm just going to stick around and smoke my pipe. I might play a little music. I might pull up some SeaRovers cards. Hopefully, if y'all have some chat questions, pull them up there or throw them in the comments, and I'll be happy to address anything you like. I can tell you inside out how the game works. I'll show you some of the pieces here. This is let's see. This is the Hurricane. Oh, let's see. This is a hurricane marker. And that's what you pass from player to player. So if a hurricane's on the board, each player passes this, and that's so you don't forget to move the hurricane. And the chart for moving the hurricane's right on the game board. You can see it on the campaign page. So you've got the hurricane marker. You've also got the start player marker. Gosh, I'm having trouble going left to right. Let's see. Start player. And you've got the Wielders of the Wind on one side. And then on the other side, we have the Dutchman himself, old Mr. Vanderdecken. He's pretty cool. So, same thing on the Hurricane marker, too. It's double-sided. It's got, let's see. Gosh, I swear, I am not. Okay. So, we got a ship. I am having a lot of trouble getting this in the screen. Okay. A ship in the Hurricane. All right. And then each player, as I said, you got three ships that you got out on the board or on the table in front of you. And so for those, you're going to have these markers. And you have each player is going to have a different pirate flag, and they have a number on them. And so you place these numbers on the cards on the table, and then those also correspond to the ship that's on the game board. So your ships are numbered. Each player has 3 ships, 1, 2, 3, and you'll have three sets of vessels, or 3 different vessels you can have on the game board. So that's the way that works. Combat between players, you know, you're free to attack any other ship you want. You know, it's risky business. I mean, if you want to win the game, you know, I mean, that was an important aspect. I didn't want to be just a game that, you know, was a free-for-all out there killing each other. But it does make sense in the game, and there are situations where you may want to, but it's not something that that is a definite track to victory. Let's put it that way. I think a player that plays strategically with the historical captains, goes after historic attacks. You know, he might have a rover out there he might use, you know, to take out an opponent or something. But with the 3 ships, you don't feel bad if one of your ships gets knocked out of commission. So that works pretty good. Anything else I can answer for you? Come here, Cooper. Come here and say hi. Come on. Right here. Come on. Come here. Come here. Here he comes. Come on. Come on. Come here. Come here and say hi. Here, look here. Yeah. There's my buddy. Yep. That's Mr. Cooper. He's first mate. He's a good boy. Yeah, you're a good boy. What you doing? Yeah, you're a good boy. I can tell you about some of the components. Now, one thing, you know, I'll give you a little history because this is fun too, because I published my first game in 1990, started in 97. And the internet wasn't even a factor then. I mean, I ran ads in Air and Space Magazine, Astronomy Magazine, sold about 100 games up front that way, and then just hit the toy fairs. You know, hit the toy fair. I used to do the convention round at ChessX, at Origins, Alliance, and it was fun back then. I mean, it was that was back when Fantasy Flight was just 2 guys in a booth, and I knew Christian and Todd and the folks at Out of the Box, Mark Osterhaus, and got to see Gary Gygax at ChessX one year, and he had about a ping pong sized table set up with what looked like a city at one end and with Godzilla and an army at the other end playing it. And one year at Origins, I got to meet Richard Garfield, the inventor of Magic. He came by my booth and saw Moonshot because it's very much inspired by Magic, you know, the way the card play works, and SeaRovers could be linked, you know, historically to that. You've got card play, you've got a supply of booty that you use, you know, to use your cards. You know, you don't necessarily, I guess you could say you tap it, but you flip it over, you spend it. But so I used to do the convention rounds, and you know, with my game Moonshot, and I sold it through, gosh, every museum you could think of. I mean, the Smithsonian, all the NASA museums, the space centers, London, Natural Museum of History in New York, Franklin Institute, Corning Glass. I mean, all over the place. And it did very well. The one thing I learned is, I needed more than one product. If I had, and I had some other games in the works designed, but I was still working at ad agencies then. And as anybody knows that tries to do this, it's a full-time job, much less for one person. And I've watched things for years. I've listened to Funding the Dream podcast, Richard Bliss, listened to it from the get-go. And I used to track Kickstarters. Back 5 years ago, I probably had a folder on my computer, with hundreds of Kickstarters in each folder, failed ones, ones that funded, and just doing research on it. But with the health issues that we had years ago, it's been digging out in one way or another, for quite a while. But at the same time, never losing sight of bringing all this to fruition. So, I've always kept SeaRovers going. I always kept, at certain times I would do more work on it than others, but always moving in the right direction, moving forward with it. When I decided to redo the graphics from the ground up, that was really the point where I knew I was going to bring it all together. All the aspects of version 3.0, the few minor changes here and there that, I revisited over the years, all my notes, everything. And it's really under the radar. I mean, not many people know about it. I'm not out there. As I said, I'm just one person. And that's one thing I would ask you all to do. You've seen what I can do as one person as far as putting all this together and with everything in this campaign. So I would ask each and every one of you that support it and want to see it reach its full potential to spread the word, tell your friends, share the campaign, share the images, visit me on Facebook. I'll friend you up, and I've got some groups on there, one for board game design, prototyping, mechanics, and then I've also got one for art direction of board games, and then I've got one for Kickstarter art direction, because I think that's something very important, learning about just the different aspects of creating a good Kickstarter campaign. The images, the different parameters and everything is something I've studied up on a lot, even though I don't have a ton of experience with it yet. This is the second campaign I've created the graphics for, and so I'm still learning the ropes, but I've got a pretty good background in graphic design, so I tend to catch things pretty quick. Is there anything, anybody else out there have any questions or anything? We'll look at the comments again, make sure nothing's popped up on the page. Glad I'm still recording. Looks like I'm on there. All right. Anybody drinking rum in celebration of SeaRovers coming? That is caramel flavored moonshine. It's pretty good stuff. And then I smoke a blend of a classic vanilla with English luxury and straight black Cavendish and a Missouri meerschaum. The finer things in life. Yo ho ho. Some of the stretch goals are some pretty cool stuff. There's one called the Pirate King. Hey, Scott. So glad to see you, man. I know and my first game was number 1,000 and something in the Board Game Geek database. I don't even think Board Game Geek was around when I started in 98. But it's great to see you here, man. I certainly appreciate it. And thanks on the congrats. SeaRovers has been around for quite a while. I think I popped up with my first thread on Board Game Geek in maybe 2005. And I posted one that said, finally, a real pirate game. Because when I started designing SeaRovers, there weren't many pirate games out there. You had Richard Berg's Blackbeard, Avalon Hill had produced it, and that's one of the games that I had. and was a great inspiration in this game. You know, it's a hex-based movement. You've got historical captains. It's very rich simulation. It can be, you know, complex by gamer standards. I mean, I really like it the way the turns work. It's more of a simulation though than something I would consider a wide audience game, which is what I wanted to create. And so that's what I set out to do with SeaRovers. Another game that was on the market at the time was Pirates Cove, and that was by Days of Wonder. Now, I met that designer. I can't remember his name, but he was a super nice guy, because I started doing Toy Fair in New York in 1998, and you had to get on the waiting list. I'm sure you still do. But back then, they put all us newbies up on the 3rd floor in Javits Center, and that's where Wizards of the Coast was, because they were a newbie too, so they had to start everywhere else, same place everybody else did. So I was up there with them, and got to talking to the guy that designed, as I said, Pirates Cove, and super nice guy, and we exchanged business cards, and had even talked after Toy Fair, and sadly he died of cancer. Not shortly after that, and that was real sad. So I was sad to see that. And you know, I would like to say a word about one of my great, yeah, Paul Randall's, exactly, Scott. That was Paul. That's who it was, and super nice guy. He was with Wizards of the Coast at the time, and I don't think Pirates Cove was on the market yet. And another funny story, that same Toy Fair, the guy who invented Apples to Apples came by my booth with his prototype. It was apples to oranges. and I was just one guy, and I was like, man, I can't do a lot to help you, but go see Mark Osterhaus and the guys down there at Out of the Box, you know, because I'd seen them at a few of the conventions, and knew them, and all they had Bosworth at the time. That was the game they were pushing, and sure enough, he hooked up with them, and you know, they put a lot into it. I know it took them, you know, about 10 years before it was finally sold or licensed. I believe it was to Mattel, but that's a great success story all the way around in board games. I mean, that's one of those you know, once in 100 years type thing. You know, you see. But yeah, Paul Randalls was a super nice guy. Trying to think who else. Man. Ron Magi, used to swap games with him. I went to Nuremberg one year. I did the Toy Fair in Nuremberg in 2000, and that was a great trip. That's where the SeaRovers started. I was there with a company I'd licensed with. I'd licensed Moonshot with a French company, and we were working on a license with Jacques Cousteau at the time, and potentially a game, and also National Geographic. But we had a booth there, and we'd also, you know, there was kind of a group of us hanging out, and one was Ray Wong with Mastershine, and they do all the RC vehicles, RC car toys. They do pedal cars and ride-ons, and so he was talking to me, and you know, we were looking at Moonshot, and he's like, well, you know, what makes such a great game? You know, what makes Monopoly so good? Why does everybody just love Monopoly? You know, it's got. Well, his thought was it's because it's greed. You know, he's like, it's got money, it's got greed in it. You know, it's like you got to come up with a game that's got, you know, greed and money. And you know, and I know how monopolies looked at. You know, so but I understand where he's coming from. You know, he's talking about an experience, and you know, my ad agency years. I mean, you know, I have a lot of different. I mean, I'm an artist. I'm also a math person. But I'm also an advertising person. You know, when it comes to strategy and campaigns and stuff, I mean, that's something I've done a lot of. Some of you, do you remember the movie Looker? If you've ever seen that movie, you know, it can get down to that type of minutia when it comes to advertising. You think about people's eye movement, you know, your phontography, you know, everything involved with a person's experience of what they're looking at, you know, from their even my Kickstarter campaign. Yeah, exactly. The eye tracking and the brainwashing. Well, you know, food advertising is very powerful, and it can be done wrong, but it can also be done right. You know, I mean, you know, your five senses are something that if you can engage in advertising, it's one of the most powerful, you know, techniques you can use. So if you read that first paragraph of my Kickstarter campaign, those first two paragraphs engage all five senses. You know, I've got taste, smell, you know, sound, everything. So, but it's all about creating an experience. You know, I want to really, with the graphics, you know, I really tried to bring to life these, the images from these classic illustrators, by breaking out of the graphics, barriers and everything, you know, when you look at the way I designed it. So I really, really spent a lot of time with that too, and tried to pay tribute to these artists. You know, N.C. Wyeth, Howard Pyle, and Frank Schoonover are just, you know, some of the most fabulous artists. I mean, you know, I look at them as the grandfathers of modern day illustration. A lot of the, I'm a comic book fan. Neil Adams, you know, Batman. I bought my first Batman comic in 1973. It was number 263 with the Riddler. So, wasn't a Neil Adams book, but he was one of my favorites, and I loved the Treasury editions when I was growing up, the great big giant ones. And but those artists and illustrators, you know, they've been gone for a while, but their artwork lives on. And so what I've tried to do is bring new life to it. You know, I've taken those characters and recast many of them in different roles. You know, the character I'm using for Black Sam Bellamy is Billy Bones, you know, from Treasure Island. But if you look at the way I've designed it into the game, it all works. It makes sense. They fit the roles. You got several captains that you'll see them on their captain cards, but then you also see the same characters on the attack cards that they represent. So a lot of time in just crafting and creating the whole experience behind it, as well as the gameplay. But back to advertising. So, you know, that is, you know, creating a campaign, creating an experience. You know, I tried to do it for all the right reasons. So all of this, from the game through the Kickstarter campaign, everything is something, you know, I've tried to create to give everyone an experience. Oh yeah, man, Lance, I love it. Yeah, Scott's talking about Undead Viking Lance Mixture, and I've known Lance. I mean, I haven't known him. I've known who he is. I know the kind of games he likes and stuff. And I kind of used to hang out with some of the Ameritrash crowd back in the day. I'd go down to Atlanta from Chattanooga and take SeaRovers and play with Michael Barnes and those guys. You know, so I used to go down there some. And I knew who Lance was. And like I said, I kind of keep under the radar. And, you know, I'll pop up every once in a while. But, you know, I think the game will stand on its own, but it does need promotion. But so I contacted Lance, because I don't do video, and I sent him a message through Facebook a couple of months ago, and you can actually see it on the campaign page. That was the actual message. I was like, "Hey man, you do game videos?" You know, that's all I said. It just said, you know, from Van Overbay, and he said something like, "Yeah, what, you know, something." And so I was like, "Well, cool, you know, here's my preview link," and I had some of the Kickstarter stuff up. So, and then the first thing he said, he came back and said, "Well, holy crap," you know. And I was just like, "Great, man, you're who I want," you know. Because if you're excited about it, you know, I'm excited about it, and so I want other people to be excited about it. And that's why not a lot of other people are working on this, because you know, I've talked to a few people, but if they're not really into it, then you know, I'm the one that's going to make it happen, and that's the kind of person I am. But I look forward to Lance's review of it, preview. You know, that's what he's going to hook us up with. So I think that's going to be great. And Scott, when did Board Game Geek start? When did you guys go online? Was that like 99 or something like that? I know you probably remember the, wow, January 2000. You probably remember the old board, what was it, board Game Net or something like that, where people talked. But I don't know if you remember the other pirate guy from back in the day. Yeah, I'm sure you probably know what I'm talking about. Yeah, exactly. That's it. And I met that guy at Toy Fair my first year there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was. I met him he actually, inspired me in a way because that was back when he was just there with his game and everything. But I followed some of that action, for a few years. I was telling somebody about Shield King. Somebody posted on Facebook, how do you get yourself started on Board Game Geek with your game or something like that? And I was like, well, first thing you got to do is got to do it the right way. It's like, you don't go on there. And I was like, do a forum search for Shield King. that's basically what I said. And then I came back and told him to, start with a designer diary, something like that. But there's some interesting history back, on Board Game Geek especially. Gosh, it's been fabulous. Yeah, exactly. Pirateer. Man, I guess you followed it. Yeah. Oh man. I mean, it went like A&E investigative reports type stuff. But man, there's so many pirate games now. I mean, gee, like I said, back when I started, there wasn't much. But yeah, that certainly, he did, man. That, if you guys want to read some stuff, look up what Scott's talking about. I mean, I don't know how much of it's still out there, but that was certainly quite a story, put it mildly. But my games, yeah, I think so. I think a few years ago, I tried to look up some of it because somebody was talking about it on Board Game Geek and brought it up. They'll bring up things like that, and but I hadn't heard it mentioned in years. Yeah, there wasn't many pirate games at all. I mean, you had, Blackbeard, Pirates Cove. I can't think of what how they came out after that, but since then, and of course, Merchants and Marauders came out. They started right around the same time I did with SeaRovers years ago. And I've taken SeaRovers and almost licensed it a couple of times. Yeah, GMT had. There was one somebody came out with that had the wind thing, something sails or something. GMT redid Blackbeard, two birds. We actually swapped games back then. He got one of my original SeaRovers, the limited editions that I hand built, and so I was kind of on the playtest team for the GMT Blackbeard, but I didn't contribute. I just kind of followed along, but there's some nice stuff though. There's a cool looking new game coming out. GMT's got The Hunt for Blackbeard. That's going to be a neat looking game. I'm fascinated by that story. It's something I would love to see. Now, this particular game I'm talking about doesn't represent the in battle like I'm talking about, but I would like to see a game that does represent the in battle, because you basically had Maynard with about 50 men, something like that, 30 to 50, and Blackbeard had 25. And at the time, they were in the channels. And of course, you're dealing with the tides and stuff. Maynard had 2 sloops and had no guns, winds of plunder. Exactly. That's it, Scott. So you could pretty much look at the history of pirate games. Gosh, Blackbeard, what were we saying? Well, I lost track. I'm sorry. But Winds of Plunder and Merchants and Marauders, another big one. Not a whole lot of historic pirate games. And some of them use the characters, but not many of them are rooted in the actual history. And I think that's one of the things when I set out to design any game. Some of them are history based, but if they are, I mean, it's really something I want to absorb myself in. And history is something that can be tricky sometimes, especially back when I started researching most of this. It's like the internet wasn't even a factor in doing research much. So, I was mainly books and stuff. And then a lot of books regurgitate information from previous versions, and there's very few first source material for pirates. But there are a couple of books, you know, Captain Johnson's, Esquilim's, Buccaneers of America. And but what I did is I contacted David D. Moore at the North Carolina Maritime Museum. He's the guy who's doing the archaeology of Queen Anne's Revenge, you know, the shipwreck. And, you know, I was able to strike up a conversation with him, and we chatted for a good bit in email and talked on the phone. And he actually did his master's thesis on Blackbeard. And what's cool about his information is David actually went to France. He's seen the logbook of the Concorde, the ship that Blackbeard captured that became Queen Anne's Revenge. And so he knows exactly where it was captured. That was the main reason I contacted him. I had was researching Blackbeard, and I had found material that was saying that it was up north near the Tropic of Cancer, you know, where it was captured. You'll find in the books there's two different accounts. And another one was saying it was down towards Martinique. And, you know, I ran into a roadblock where I didn't know which was right. And I was like, well, you know, I know who will know. So I contacted him. And as I said, he's seen the logbooks. He's one of the foremost authorities on Blackbeard. So any of the information that's in the game, all the different Blackbeard attacks that are in there are historically accurate, you know, and backed up by the best sources I could find. My game Moonshot was kind of the same way. You know, I researched it. I went through NASA's legal office in D.C., worked with the media resources in Houston. This was back in '98. And so once it hit the market, you know, I always put a bibliography in my game. So all the sources that I use, but it was immediately picked up by National Geographic Society at Toy Fair. And the lady was just thrilled with it. She's like, it's like a Time Life book in a box, you know. And but, you know, that's one thing I really try to get it. Yeah, you know, Hollywoodized pirates, like Pirates of the Caribbean, so much of it is, especially Walt Disney too. Disney was a huge pirate fan. You know, I always tell people, you know, Walt Disney's, you know, he'd play SeaRovers drunk with a pirate hat on and an eye patch, you know. So, but, you know, the image of pirates that we have is all shaped by these illustrators, and mainly by these three that are in my game, because, you know, the image of pirate, we didn't have photography, and it was these guys who created those images. And so everything that Disney did was based off the images you see in my game. And then, you know, all the way up through modern day, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean and stuff, it all falls back to the images that these guys created, Wyeth, Schoonover, and Powell. And there's a couple other ones that created some pirate images too. But these were the core guys at the Brandywine School. And, you know, pirates at that time was like Westerns were in the 50s and 60s. You know, one time in the 60s, I think there was more than 30 TV shows on it were Westerns. And so growing up, you know, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, you didn't have TV, you didn't have radio, but you had books and, you know, rich storybooks, and anything that had an illustration was just that much more magical. I can even remember as a kid, some of the books, you know, even we just had in the house that had illustrations. And, you know, as a child looking at an illustration, you don't have the bounds that an adult has, you know, if you're imagination and reality. I mean, you can look at an illustration that takes you to a different world. I mean, it can be real. And so that's one of the things I tried to do in the game, is bring that stuff to life. So what's your favorite pirate game, Scott? A typical game, SeaRovers with 4 players with the basic movement system, probably about an hour and a half. Now, 4 players with the advanced could go anywhere from 2 to 3, maybe even longer, just depending on what you want to use. If you want to use, like I said, there's a weather gauge, you know, some other rules, and you know, people will take their time when they're doing, you know, combat and things like that. And if you're really looking at the odds and things, but it doesn't seem like it's a slow game. You know, everything's really buttoned up. That's one of the things. If you look at my rule books. Now, the version that's on the page right now is version 2.0, but it's pretty tight. And then, you know, I've got other places, the newest rule book I did for Tranquility Base and Soviet Moon, but you won't find ambiguities in my rules. You won't find situations, spots that just like, gee, what I do in this situation, or, well, this ain't covered, you know. Well, it's covered, and it's covered more than once. I believe in triple redundancy. That's how we got to the moon. So, if my backups at home, my computer are triple redundant. I can't guarantee everything in the game manual is referred to 3 times, but it's at least twice the important things. Francis Drake. I don't know. I haven't played it, and I'm not that familiar with it. There was another one I was thinking about, and maybe it is Francis Drake I'm thinking about, but more a Euro-ish. But that was a pirate game. Yeah, Jamaica's cool, and Jamaica's got. Do they call him Teach? I think they call him Edward Teach in Jamaica. Yeah, Euro. That's cool. And I play some Euros. When I started out, gosh, Settlers of Catan was just hitting the market in '98. Really just picking up speed, and there wasn't many other Euros. I traded Ron Magi for I can't ever pronounce his name, for a game called Ritter on Funktadel. Now, Scott, you probably know what that is. Ritter on Funktadel. It's it's sure isn't a popular game, but it's based on medieval tournaments, and a copy of Formula Day. Now, Formula Day is a game that I got back in the day. That was one of the funnest things about going to conventions. I mean, I'm a big kid. I mean, I love slot. I came back from Nuremberg with slot cars. That was just awesome. I had a slot car track, in 2001. That was it was Scale Electrics, and I had Cobras, I had NASCARs, I had Formula Ones, Indies, and I had about 36 feet of running track, I think. But I love stuff like that. I love rockets, model rockets. I've got my eyes set on a Lego Saturn V, but I haven't got that yet. Yeah, now Treasure Island looks really cool. I haven't gotten a hold of that yet, and I do want to check that out. I really do. There's a couple of new games. The Grizzled. I think the Grizzled looks like a fantastic game. So I love games that have flavor, that have history. Because it's an experience. I mean, people go to movies and you spend 2 hours and sit down. And so that's what I want to do. I want to create something that entertains you and that you'll come back to. I mean, we live in a day now. It's a lot different now. I mean, gamers played lots of different games. It was more segmented years ago. You had people that played war games, people that played Ameritrash, people that played Euros, and now you see a lot of people playing a lot of different kinds. Games tend to spread out more into different categories. You got thematic games, which is a very, very wide category now. It used to be segmented up into different things like Ameritrash and stuff. But that's something that, with my games, I try to bridge, the gap between those, create something that's accessible, that's got a deep level of strategy, definitely a deep level of research and that type of experience involved in it. But I want it to be satisfying strategically, something that your choices make a difference. It's a game that the more you play it, just like any game like poker and stuff, the more you play it, the more you're familiar with the probabilities, the cards, just what works, how the cards interact with each other. 160 cards is a pretty good sized deck, especially compared to, if you just think about 52 or something like that. So, it's really rich that way too. One of the most beautiful new games I think that's out is Koi. I think that is just a fabulous looking game. We're in a renaissance of game design, and the artwork especially, and I think anybody that's doing Kickstarter can tell you how important artwork is, and there's no reason it shouldn't be. This is a day and an age we live in now where, the artwork is second to none with the stuff you're seeing. And so I'm a proponent of good artworks in games, good design, good ergonomic design. I try to do that in my games. When you fan the cards out, the symbols, the way everything looks, I try to make it very easy to play. The rules, when you need to look up a necessary rule, there's a table of contents in the front that you can find the particular section very easily that should address any question. There's a gameplay example that actually shows you, walks you through a few turns of the game, gets you right off the bat. So, and I'm always open to suggestions. That's one of the reasons I went ahead and launched the campaign. The game's obviously done, but there's always room, for the game manual. I'm excited about putting all the reward levels in there, because in the game manual it's going to have a special section for the the Blackbeard's Bounty backers, Morgan's Manifest, the Dutchman's Deal, and then also Davy Jones' Dozen. And the Davy Jones Dozen is going to be really cool. It's going to have a whole single page with a really cool design with those 12. Hopefully we can sell all 12. So, but that's going to be really cool. So I've been working on laying that out for the game manual. So, anybody got any other questions about SeaRovers that I can tell you, or anything about games? I started playing games before I could. I can't remember when I started learning the actual moves of chess pieces, and was just moving around on the game board. When I was 2 or 3 years old. I have older brothers, and so I started playing chess at a very young age. And so by 3 or 4, I was actually playing the game, and by 5th, I won the state championship in 5th and 6th grade back to back. And I used to play a lot of chess young, and was serious, kind of into it. That's back when some of the first Fidelity's Chess Challenger computers were coming out and stuff. But I drifted away from it. Things like D&D came along. I started playing D&D in like 79, 80 with the monochrome modules, and still just love it. I mean, that's something that there's a certain magic to. I went to my first Gen Con in 1982, and that was in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. I remember Steve Jackson was there, and had just launched the 007, and me and all my buddies were into, we played a lot of Top Secret, TSR's Top Secret. We played a little Gamma World, a little Boot Hill. But Top Secret and D&D was our main games. We played Champions some, a bit of Starfleet Battles. Car Wars, we liked Car Wars a lot. That was one of our favorites. And then as the 80s progressed, I started playing Axis and Allies. That was a favorite. And of course, I always played a little Risk. Played some of the Avalon Hill games. And then I got into Blood Bowl. Really liked Blood Bowl. I just thought that was fabulous. You take football and D&D and throw it together, and make it a fun game with all these miniatures. So I had a ton of those because I've always collected comic books over the years. So at different points, I've had lots of different collections. I had a collection of model rockets, some rare ones for a while. Yeah, Blood Bowl's great, man. Snotlings, anything with Snotlings, That's why I love Dungeon Quest with the Catacombs, And that's one of my favorite games. I love Dungeon Quest, the classic Games Workshop version. And their Fury of Dracula, Warlock of Firetop Mountain. I had all those. And Talisman, of course, started out back then with those early Games Workshop. Those particular kind of bookshelf boxes, what they look like. But Blood Bowl was great. That was a great production. I think the first version I got was third edition. I believe came with the like the styrofoam game board, and the had a bunch of plastic pieces. I had a bunch of metal ones, and that's what I did. I went to the local comic shop in Atlanta at the time, and I traded a bunch of comic books for every Blood Bowl miniature they had. So, but at different times over the years, I've had complete runs of Punisher, X-Men, Spider-Man. I didn't have Spider-Man #1, but I had most of the important ones. I had 129, and of course I've had tons of Batman comics over the years, and I've wheeled and dealed on eBay since about 2000. So I'm on there as Northbridge Studios, and I wheel and deal comics sometimes. It's something I'll pop up and do, just whenever. I haven't done it in a while, but sometimes I'll sell off games, comics, rockets, whatever type of things I happen to collect, because being in ad agencies and stuff, over the years I've managed to sometimes compile interesting collections of stuff, paper samples from different corporations that would be used by paper companies, and some of those would be rare. I've sold those on eBay, but Man, this has been great. I hope I've given y'all some good information about SeaRovers. If there's anything else I could think, gameplay wise, I know this doesn't take the place of any gameplay videos, but those are coming. As I said, we've got Undead Viking, Logan Chops, Pirates Parlay, Unfiltered Gamer, all having games. So hopefully we'll get some back from those guys. I went ahead and launched the campaign even without them, but I knew it was a 30-day campaign, and I know a lot of times campaigns will hit a kind of that mid-campaign slump, and I thought I had everything pretty good shape. I've been, like I said, dealing with a little bit of kidney stone issue, and had kept pushing things back. But I wanted to go ahead and get it launched. I felt I was close enough. Everything with the reviewers, the things I had ready for the page, and so far I think it's going great. I mean, I appreciate everybody's support so much. This is I've really tried to make sure I've looked under every nook and cranny. I've really tried to get the price at the right price, the shipping, making it Euro friendly, just everything. I really tried to streamline the stretch goals and even just the components itself. Want high quality, but also things that aren't going to cause manufacturing headaches and stuff. I had looked at game mats, the neoprene mats, but those things weigh a ton. I mean, my gosh, you put 4 of those in a game, and those things alone weigh, I don't know, 2-3. I mean, it's heavy, and in miniatures, SeaRovers. Now I could easily see us, I've got the Blackbeard miniature in this one, but down the road, man, this is basically a deluxe version is what we're producing as the base game. Even with the stretch goals, the linen and stuff. I mean, it won't get produced without linen, so don't worry about that. But it's most of them are things that will enhance the game, but they aren't things that you feel it should have been in the base game to begin with. The Volvels are cool. I'm still looking into those. I'm not sure about the weight on that because it takes like 4 punch boards to make those. I don't even know if they still know what I'm talking about, if the manufacturer or not, but those things are going to be cool. It's going to look like an antique astrolabe. So you've got an antique astrolabe that's going to have, like I said, the wind modifiers on one side, and then all the combat odds on the other one. So that's going to be really cool. And man, Scott, I appreciate you guys so much. I know my Board Game Geek ads started running night before last at midnight, something like that. They ran through. I don't know. I lose track of time. I work 36, 48 hours, and then if I'm lucky, I might sleep 8 or 12. And so I lose track of days and time very quick. But I know we just had our Board Game Geek ads running, and they just started, and they ran on the front page right off the bat. I ran my halfsies, and so they did great, though. We had a great response from them. I thought they looked super. Chad's been wonderful to work with, and they have. They're super. I still don't even know how it all works. I don't know where the other ones, I guess they just get shown during the site. Now, I saw the top horizontal ads, and then, of course, I've also got the verticals and the more square-shaped ads. But I believe those will be running the whole month, I think, is the way the package works. So, but Chad had said, too, if things go good, I might be able to get some more halvesies in there. So, we're watching everything. I need to get those videos on the page, and as I said, if we can get everybody involved, spreading the word, we reached our halfway point pretty good. Now, I went into this with everything realistic. I didn't want to create a campaign and have some kind of low funding goal. So boom, we could pop up and say, oh, funded in, but I mean, everything about this campaign is realistic. It's all real numbers. It's all based on, production numbers, quantities, and certain things like that. Now, I have some room in there. I've already made a couple of little adjustments, because we're going to get that Blackbeard's challenge, the 12-card solo challenge. So that's going to happen one way or the other. So, now I need to hook up with Rhonda. I can't say his name. I'm sorry, man. I'm just catching up. Is it Rado? But I know who that is. I've watched his videos. I've been out of it's like I come in and out of the loop. Like I was really in the loop about 5 years ago. Like I said, I was really researching Kickstarter. I was watching every campaign. I was logging them. I was filing them away, keeping databases and stuff. And then I had to just, knuckle down and get back on track and survive. Make a living and get things back on track to get to the situation where I am now, to where I can actually put it back into it. But I did have to step away, and I haven't been as diligent as, keeping up with a lot of things that's happened in the game industry. So it's been interesting to see what's happened over the last few years. Rado, yeah, cool. Right on. Man, Scott, thanks so much for joining me here tonight. I really appreciate it. You guys are great. Tell Octavian I said hey, and Chad. It sure has, man. It's been really neat to watch it over those years. It's been fascinating, because when I started, trivia games, I mean, that's what it was. You got a toy fair. All the game companies that were successful and stuff were the ones that were doing like multiple different trivia games. You had movie trivia, all the stuff, and that was the thing. That was kind of the gig. So I've watched Euro games. As I said, it's kind of started with Settlers of Catan, and in '98 when I went to my first toy fair in '97, and then exhibited the first in '98, and so it was really just starting to make the entrance. And then when I went to Nuremberg in 2000, could really see the winds of change starting to come. So it's been great. The industry is doing fabulous. I mean, we've got 5 straight years of growth on Kickstarter. Each year setting a record. I think last year was 165 million in the tabletop category. I know Board Game Geek, you guys just keep growing by leaps and bounds every year. It's fantastic to see what you guys have created, and it's wonderful for the industry. I mean, there's no other place that's the all together one stop board game place. It's Board Game Geek. So that's great, Scott. How many guys? I mean, what are some of your numbers now? What kind of? I mean, you got member numbers, and then you've also just got traffic. Gosh, yeah, people are getting the word that games are fun. Man, 2 million. That's incredible. Whew. That's awesome. That is something else. But yeah, it really is. There's a lot of people playing games. A lot of people play different games. I see, and of course, there's so many different avenues of ways to contribute. People that make content. They pop up on YouTube, Instagram. People making photos, doing reviews. They're so creative in the things they're coming up with, but it also shows the diversity. In the types of games you're seeing. I see people reviewing. What used to be considered, in the war game category. Those types of games and stuff. But I think you're starting to see the creators too are, picking pieces and parts. One of the types of games I'm really excited about is the adventure book games. I really like those. That's something I would like to explore in game design. The stuff that Plaid Hat Games is doing. But yeah, gosh, 2 million. Woo. So you guys got any big plans coming up, Scott? I mean, I really like the way you guys have kept the original interface, the front page. And I know that's had to be in a struggle over the years. I know you had a lot of push and pull at different times. I know you guys experimented with thumbs up, thumbs down. There's been a lot of different things. Okay, a new front page. Well, and I like the new game pages are cool. But I know how resistant people are to change. Somebody had suggested me going over to grognards.com, and posting about SeaRovers. And I haven't been over there in years, and I never was I bet it's going to shake things up. The Board Game Geek, the threads are going to be active about for any changes. It's always like that. Yeah. See, that's one of the things about designing a Kickstarter page. Scott's talking about 60% of the world on mobile. Now I sit here on the desktop, but I keep my phone next to me, and a Kickstarter page can be designed and it look great on a computer, but it look like crap on a phone. I mean, if it's not done right. And that's something that, I've taken a crash course in. I've started designing websites in 1997. So I've been designing webs, and I was current up through about 2008. So from 97 to 2008, I pretty much ran my own company, and we did websites and stuff. I don't know, Scott, are you familiar with Vibe Beverages out of Dallas? It's Johnny Delavadine. He is the CEO of Dallas Fitness down there. He's also a game designer. He's one of the guys that designed the game Rated that I was kind of co-design on. Tom Vassell did a neat review of it years ago back. I can't even get him to holler at me now. But hey, SeaRovers was on his top 10 upcoming list. I ran into him at Origins in what it was, 07 or something when I was there at the game, and he was taking a look at it. Yeah, I don't know if Vibe Beverages is still around or not, but that was one of my clients back in 2008. So I was current with web design up then, and then when the illnesses and hit and stuff, that kind of, I've stayed on the computer, but I couldn't keep the business going the way I did. So that was one of the things that kind of got flipped upside down. So I've been catching up with designing for a Kickstarter interface is not that hard. There's not that much to it. You got 680 pixel width. There's not a lot of fancy stuff. You can't put HTML tags or anything like that in it. But I think something that's stymies some people is whether to use images or text. And the very first campaign I designed the graphics for was Tranquility Base that Worthington licensed from me and ran last year. And I did it with mostly images with text. And it worked pretty good. I'm not a big fan of text in images, though. Anytime it gets down to 680, you're going to get a little bit of, certain fonts will look pretty sharp, but I don't know. I did that for that campaign and used all text and images. But with SeaRovers, I tried to take a different tact. Partly, as conceptually with the storybooks and stuff, because you got pages and text on a page. So I tried to intermix images and text a lot, and I did run into the text limit. There is a 35,000 character text limit on Kickstarter. So, and I'm sure the next one I'll do a little bit better, be more creative with. But I think it looks pretty good. I think it's getting there. I still might make some changes to it, but so far so good. Hey, thanks, Scott. I sure do appreciate it. I really did try to work it over quite a bit. At one point, I had some of those images much larger, but then when I'd look at it on the phone, it's like, man, it's like you're blowing my phone up with Blackbeard. So I shrunk some of it down a little bit. So everybody, get your dump stat tea. Doug, shoot, man, these are great. I need to get another one for Cooper. Well, man, I've been here a good while. This is great. Scott, take care of yourself. I certainly appreciate you being here. I think I'm going to wrap it up myself, too. Everybody, please visit the comments, and I'll be happy to answer any questions and respond to each one of you individually. And also spread the word. Again, I'm one person. My name is Van Overbay. I've designed SeaRovers and created all of this so we can get it out there to you. And I really appreciate your support, and we can make it happen and reach its full potential, especially if just each and every one of you just even just spread the word a little bit. Share some of the images. Go to Facebook. Go to my history and action pages. There's things on there you can share. And I really appreciate you tuning in, and we'll do this again. And thanks for joining me. And I'm Van, and this is out.